Thanks a lot for this introduction and also for giving us an opportunity to share our Kilimanjaro story with you guys. We prepared some photos and stories that we want to talk today. We want to apologize in advance if something goes not that smooth. This is the first time that we are doing such a presentation in such a format. So this is an outline of our presentation. Today you will learn from us, from our perspective, why Kilimanjaro is a special mountain, how it all started for us. Of course, climbing the highest mountain of Africa, which Kilimanjaro is, would not have been possible without local people by our side. So we will, of course, talk about our dream team. We will share some joyful moments of a typical day on the mountain, how we interacted with the culture. And of course, you will get some insight of the hardships that we had on the mountain, because of course, climbing Kilimanjaro was a major challenge to all of us. So at the end of this presentation, we want to have a small discussion. We will tell you why we think it was our lifetime adventure. Maybe you will tell us if you want to undertake a similar adventure. Yeah, and after the presentation also, we would be happy to share some insights and tips of how to prepare for such a journey, what to bring with yourself. Yeah, so without any further ado, let's start our presentation. And the first stop is the gate to the Kilimanjaro National Park. This is us, Chunga Changa team, who decided to travel to Tanzania. Actually, Evgeny traveled not with us. He came to Tanzania maybe 10 days after us, but I decided to Photoshop him on this picture so you guys have a perspective of those who will be presenting today. Yeah, so Kilimanjaro is a special mountain. It's a natural wonder. And why is it so? Well, first of all, I want to show you this picture. I took it when we were already descending from the summit, and it shows you one of the biggest base camps on Kilimanjaro. It just gives you a perspective of how many people were about to ascend the summit of Kilimanjaro or have already done so the day I took this picture. Every year, more than 50,000 tourists attempt to climb Kilimanjaro. So why is it so special? Why so many people are attracted to Kilimanjaro? Well, the obvious reason you can already see in this photo, the views, the landscape on the mountain is simply breathtaking. It is known as a sky island because most of the time you hike on Kilimanjaro, you hike above the clouds. And honestly, the most spectacular sunsets that I saw in my life, I saw on Kilimanjaro. Another reason why so many people come to Kilimanjaro is because of its uniqueness. Being the highest freestanding mountain of the world, it requires from climbers no special technical preparation. So basically everyone in good physical shape can climb Kilimanjaro. Also, it has 4 unique ecological zones that tourists would go through on the way to the top of Kilimanjaro. You can recognize them already from this image. They range from the rainforest at the foothills of Kilimanjaro to the snows of Kibo and Mavenzi at the very top. Mount Kilimanjaro is a volcanic mountain. It was formed by the eruption of Shira, Mavenzi, and Kibo volcanoes. Shira and Mavenzi are extinct volcanoes, whereas Kibo is a dormant volcano, which means that it can erupt anytime in the future. So I already mentioned the snows on top of Kibo and Mavenzi. So another interesting fact about Kilimanjaro is that it's located literally on the equator. And being the equatorial mountain, it's only one of 3 African mountains that have a glacial cap on top of them. So in order to see snows of Kilimanjaro, and a lot of people actually come to Kilimanjaro to see the snows, you would have to travel all the way to East Africa, to Tanzania, where Kilimanjaro is located. Geologically speaking, it is situated along so-called Great Rift Valley over here. It's a geological site at which 2 blocks of the African continental crust spread from one another, and thereby giving birth to numerous volcanoes in this area, and also, of course, to the largest one, Mount Kilimanjaro. I already briefly mentioned the vegetation zones or climatic zones of Kilimanjaro, and everyone that undertakes this journey feels like as if he or she is going from the equator to the Antarctica. You start in the rainforest, where it's about 15 when the weather is bad, to 25 degrees when the weather is really hot, all the way to the Arctic zone, where the temperatures on average are -15 or -20. So you start your climb, as I already mentioned, in the rainforest. You go through the lush vegetation of trees, which are the habitat to 2 quite unique monkey species. The blue monkeys that are known for quite peculiar grooming techniques, and also to an endemic monkey species, black and white colobus monkeys. And these guys were actually giving us some trouble falling asleep because they were screaming all the time. One of our, actually the first camp that we stayed at was still in the forest zone. So yeah, that gave us a bit of special African flair during the first night on Kilimanjaro. So as you hike higher, you transition into a landscape which has much sparser vegetation. It's a moorland. And here you can see quite alien-looking plants which resemble giant cactus, but in fact they're so-called ground cells, which are found originally on Kilimanjaro, and scientists think that they actually originated on Kilimanjaro and then migrated and colonized some other volcanic volcanic mountains in the region. From about 4,000 to 4,300 meters, you transition into the volcanic landscapes of the Alpine Desert, and here you find no vegetation at all, only some volcanic black rocks, and also quite spectacular geological formations such as this volcanic neck, which is on Kilimanjaro called Lava Tower. It was actually one of the sites of our lunch. And yeah, and also you can see some evidence of the fact that Kilimanjaro was volcanically active in the recent times. We walked literally along the lava flows. And of course, all the ecological or vegetation zones of Kilimanjaro are crowned by the snows of Kilimanjaro. This photo was taken from the very top, from the Uhuru Peak, and it shows you the present state of the glacial fields on the crater of Kilimanjaro. One important reason for tourists to come to Kilimanjaro is to see the glacial cap that is actually destined to disappear. In the last 100 years, almost 80% of the Kilimanjaro ice cap completely, not completely, but by 80% vanished, and the process is continuing. There are several reasons for that. The major impact on this process has the deforestation around the mountain because of the agricultural land use, and also, of course, climate change. So these are the reasons why so many people come to Kilimanjaro and why it's considered to be a magnet. So how come we decided to come to Kilimanjaro? Well, it all started a bit more than a year ago when I approached Christina and asked her if she was up to climbing Kilimanjaro, and she said, yeah, let's do it. And then we spread the word among some other friends, and everyone else was like, yep, let's do it. Well, actually, for me personally, it was a childhood dream to see the snows of Kilimanjaro. I remember how at school, my geography teacher would, with passion, tell us about the wilderness of African savanna, the bushmen in the volcanic landscape of the Great Rift Valley, and of course about the snows of Kilimanjaro that were about to disappear. And back then I thought, well, that's cool. Maybe one day I will go to Africa and see the snows of Kilimanjaro. But of course, back then, such a prospect seemed to be really distant and remote as going to a different planet. But now all we had to do was to buy the tickets, secure the visa, and of course prepare. And we're preparing for this trip for quite some time. Yeah. So as I already mentioned, Evgeny traveled afterwards, after we descended from Kilimanjaro, and maybe you can tell your story, how you decided to come to Tanzania to climb Kilimanjaro.
Yeah, so my story was a little different. So I don't have the mouse, but maybe you can see that guy in the middle with the glasses, the red-haired guy. Yes, that's my friend Toby. He's a colleague. And maybe a little after Vladimir and the others decided independently, he approached me. So like, hey, dude, what's up? Like, I'm like, yeah, what's going on? And then he's like, you know what? I want to climb the Kilimanjaro. I want to go to Tanzania. And I wanted to ask you, out of all of my friends, if you're going to be my travel buddy. And I was like, what? And it just seemed like a very, very special offer and a special chance to do something I've never thought of, because Kilimanjaro, I mean, of course I heard about Kilimanjaro, but it was never on my mind. So I gave it like, I thought about it for a night and a day, and then I also talked to my parents, and then they're like, this is like a lifetime adventure, like why say no to that? And so after thinking about it for a little while, I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this. It sounds crazy, but I'm up for it. And this is how my adventure started. And as Vladimir said, we coincided, like we didn't talk about going at the same time, but February is a great month to go. And so it happened that the trip that I took with Toby, my friend, and also the other guys, we were really close to one another. There was just really maybe 10 days difference. And yeah, the photo that you see is from the very beginning of the trip when we started our hike.
Yep. And so it also coincided that we took the same route. And there are actually different routes that you can take all the way to the summit of Kilimanjaro, which is Uhuru Peak. We decided to take the western route, which is known as Limosho route. It takes about 7 to 8 days along this route to reach the summit of Kilimanjaro. It is claimed to be the most picturesque route on Kilimanjaro and also the longest one. And we decided to take this pass because it allows you enough time to actually acclimatize to the high altitudes on the mountain, and therefore you have much more success of climbing Kilimanjaro. Of course, as I already mentioned, this journey would not have been possible without these people. There are numerous, and Julia now will tell you guys who these people are and how they helped us.
Actually, made our trip unforgettable, comfortable, and full of memories. So who they are? These are the guides, then the cook, also the cook assistants, waiter, then camp manager, then toilet crew, and the porters. When we saw them for the first time in the bus, yeah, so it was like, okay, so it's, sorry, what's, I will try to do, yeah, I will try to do that with the keyboard. So we saw them first time in the bus, and we were traveling together, actually to the entrance of the park. And during our bus trip, so we were, we just looked at each other, but we even didn't speak. So, but the icebreaker was the song that they started to sing. And then we, so in this team, everybody has had its own role. So firstly, the guides. So we had the main guide and also assistant guides. We met them one day before the start, and they checked all our gear and approved our start before even we reached the entrance gate. And also they helped us to rent the gear in the local shop. And they were our companions during the hike. They introduced us Tanzania, local lifestyle, economy, and their customs to us. During these 8 days, they were like our parents and doctors and bodyguards. Sometimes they were even our porters when we didn't feel good. They were our sport instructors, storytellers, and mediators between us and the rest of the team. We were totally dependent on them because they planned our day, and they gave us internet access, took care of our good mood and health. Next. Yeah. Then next is Cook, or Mr. Delicious. He, in his own words, was an engineer of our stomach. So he surprised us with every meal, and he was the most respected and praised person during all 8 days, because every time when we reached the camp, our first question was when we will have a dinner. And he was arranging the caterings and also organized the food resupply on the 4th or 5th day. Cook assistants. We were the big group, and our cook and his team took care about all our dishes, and also they cooked for all porters. And we noticed that they were the most busy group during our stay, because they were first to wake up and last one who go to sleep. And our waiter, so he made our dining room nice with white napkins. He also tried to make all the dishes clean, and he brought us water in the morning and in the evening. And he was the person whom we saw every morning, because he woke us up and wished a good day and brought us tea or coffee. Then camp manager. So we realized the importance of this guy after several days, because he was like a shadow director of every camp, and he took care that our tents were ready when we arrived, and also everything what we had, all our backpacks were in the tents as well. And toilet crew. So it's a very important service when you go to Kilimanjaro, and you have to pay extra for that to have your own toilet. And this guy carried our toilet and cleaned it all the time, and we must admit that he was very professional in his duties. And then I hope it, yeah, porters. Sorry, guys. Yeah. Porters. Firstly, you can think that there are so many of them, but they can carry only 20 kilos, and it's including, so they carry our tents, our bags, all the utensils. Also, they carry the food, and also they bring the water to the camp where we stay, and they are not allowed to carry more than 20 kilos, and also their own stuff. And actually on the way, so we have our journey very relaxed, and these guys needed to bring everything much faster and be ready for us to come. And all together, yeah, we did it. Christina, you have to take.
I try.
Yeah. I gave up.
So we will ask Vladimir to give a control to me for the presentation. I think now it will work. Just a second. Yes. So as Vladimir already mentioned, we spent not 1 day on the mountain, but actually we spent 8 days. And that's why we thought that it wouldn't be a bad idea to share with you or describe you how did the typical day on the mountain look like. So the typical day on the mountain usually started for us quite early. And it was not because we really wanted to enjoy the sunrise, even though it was really beautiful. But because we had some challenges with the most basic things which you could think about. So usually we started quite early, and it means that we were supposed to be waking up around 6:30 or 7 o'clock in the morning. But many of us, or at least people from my tent, were putting the alarm half an hour or 1 hour earlier. Before the official waking up time, because we were struggling to find all the essentials which we prepared in advance the night before, already knowing that in the morning we will have some challenges. We also were struggling to find prepared clothes and all other things which we want to take with us for the day. Because when you do not have any experience with camping, or you have very little experience with camping, then it takes you really much more time than you could imagine. Also, half an hour before breakfast, or even 1 hour before breakfast, we usually got a cup of tea or coffee directly to the tent. And this was described to us or explained to us by the reasons that in the mountains, when you might have a high sickness or altitude sickness, that your stomach gets some problems, and this cup of tea before breakfast might help you a lot. So after packing everything for the day, and also packing the rest in the duffel bag, which I have to say also was not that easy, and therefore I would like to give you a small tip that if you go camping, leave as much space in your bag as possible, because during the hiking and camping it will be getting less and less. And you don't want to spend a lot of time in the morning jumping on the back while you already have a lack of oxygen and you are short on air. So just have either a bigger bag or a less stuff with you. Going further with the slides. I try to go further. Which doesn't work. Yes. So when we were finally getting to breakfast, during this time, the crew was packing all the stuff from the camp. The slides are jumping back and forth, but don't pay attention to it. And you can see that we had a lot of stuff, and that's why it was more or less a logistic challenge for the crew to pack the tents, the food, and all their utilities which they had to use for cooking and the rest. yeah, but we also had the health check during this time. Maybe a few words I have to share with you also about the health check. This is something which we had every morning and every evening. We had to check the blood pressure and the level of oxygen. And all this we had to put in the special form together with any health complaints, which was usually checked by our guides. And they were giving us some recommendations, either to take some medicine or some rest, whatever. Then finally, once we had breakfast and everything was packed from our side, we could set off to the next camp. Here I have to say that from day to day we actually had a lot of fun. Everyone was occupied with different things. As you can see on this slide, the guides usually were trying to keep us slow. Sometimes they even were forcing us to walk slower, because this is one of the key this is a key if you want to reach the top, and if you want to acclimatize yourself for the high altitude. Some of us were enjoying the nature, some were dancing or singing, and some people were half of the way thinking about food. But in any case, we always had a lot of fun, as I already said before. A little bit less fun had our porters. Because in contrast to us, they had to walk as fast as possible. Sometimes they were even running. And they also had to carry these heavy bags, which Julia already mentioned before. And I have to say, sometimes we were wondering how is it possible to run with such heavy bags on the paths where you would be really happy to have your hands free, because you want to keep yourself from falling or from stumbling upon something. Then the next slide comes. The next slide comes at a certain moment.
Shall I help you?
If it goes, yes, yeah, thank you, Vladimir. Thank you. So usually on the way to the next camp, it was taking us 5 to 7 hours. It was depending either on the complexity of the route or altitude or how we were feeling ourselves. And if Vladimir helps me again with the next slide, there you will see that all the sites, the campsites, were having splendid view. And this was what was uniting the campsites. But before telling you more about the organization of the campsite, I would like to share with you also what we usually did upon arrival. And the first thing was that we had to register ourselves. There was a ranger hut in every camp, and there we had to enter our names, either for some statistics or for some security reasons. This I cannot say. But afterwards, we were taking our photo, group photo, because we never knew whether we will be able to make it to the next campsite, to the next point or not. That's why we were very happy every time when we reached any camp. Then you also can see here that one of the activities for us, first activities in the camp, was to take an improvised shower. It was only one bowl of warm water, which we could get, which was already something. So it's more than nothing. Sometimes we also had time to take some rest and to enjoy the view, but it was depending how long the trekking time was taking us during the day. Then I also would like to give you a very quick guide to the camp, to the typical camp in Kilimanjaro. On this slide you can see how our kitchen looked like and also our canteen. You also see our toilet and the tents. But the best will be to see probably the video which was made by our main team's reporter, Vladimir. He will guide you through the camp.
Yeah, initially I made it for my Instagram.
So we are at Kili camp, almost 4,000 meters. And this is how our camp is organized. So we've got 3 tents for 6 people. This is our tent, mine and Oleg's. It looks like this. And quite spacious for 2 people. And then we've got 2 times for girls, and over there is our, let's say, private toilet. It's actually really useful when you are on such trip like this one. So I'm gonna show you guys how it looks like. Here it is, our portable toilet. Some guys over there, porters, and this is our dining room. So this is where we have dinner, breakfast and lunch. But at the moment we have some battles between the locals and Christina.
Yeah, this was a short introduction from Vladimir to our camp life. And maybe a few words, I still would like to tell you about our toilets. It's quite a special topic because we actually ordered our private toilet for the whole team. And it might sound ridiculous that someone has to carry a toilet from one camp to another, but it's really a good idea to have one because you never know what will expect you on the next campsite. Sometimes in the night you really don't want to walk too far away in the rocks to find the toilet. And sometimes the toilets on Kilimanjaro are simply not people friendly. That's why if you have your own one, you will be very happy. Then also, actually, when we were arriving to the camp, we didn't have that much time with the daylight, and it was getting dark quite early or quite soon. But we were always finding time for the health check, about which I already told you. We also had some briefing from our guides with instructions for the next day, with the weather forecast recommendations, what we should wear, how much water we should take with us, and so on. We also found time for entertainment and for some fun. On this, I will show you the video as well, but a bit later. And of course, we were having dinner, which was really heavy and very big usually. But I have to say that I think at least one thing about which your grandma will be really proud of you on Kilimanjaro is that you eat a lot because you're constantly hungry. And on this, I give the word to Masha, who will tell you about what we ate on Kilimanjaro.
So, hi all. As the girl said, we ate quite a lot on Kilimanjaro, and so we've spent a lot of time in our dining room, which is there without the people. And you can also see how what the fine dining Evgeny had during his trip. So the food on Kilimanjaro is quite standardized. So every group would have something similar. And if you ask the guides, say, what day did we have fish? They always say it the first day. So although it's standardized, there are some differences, but we always had porridge and omelette with fruits for breakfast with some local tea and coffee, which was quite tasteless, I have to say. So if you would like to enjoy your good tea and coffee, take it with you. In the afternoon, we always had snack, which was usually popcorn or some sort of biscuits. And usually it was before lunch and dinner. And so you understand, we would usually have lunch in, breakfast in our first camp where we wake up, and then lunch and dinner we would have on our second camp. That means that we would usually have only snacks during our hike, and we spent a lot of time eating in the camp. For the lunch, we would have salads, some meat, and side dish with fruits, and again, tea and coffee. The interesting thing is that we had quite a variety of food. So we also had some local cuisine, which is ugali. Ugali is the maize porridge, that is eaten all across the Africa. Usually it comes with some sort of a side dish. In our case, it was greens, but it could also be fish or meat. There is a lot of Indian immigrants, so locals as well as us eat a lot of curry and Indian influenced cuisine. We also had some samosas. The interesting thing is that as Tanzania was the colony of Germany, they also had some influence from the German cuisine. So for example, they eat a lot of cabbage in different ways, from fried cabbage to sauerkraut. You can find everything. And that was quite surprising, to be honest. Yeah, that's all for the food.
Yep.
And so this is how it was prepared. Now I think Vladimir has a video how it's prepared.
Yeah, so actually on one of the occasions I paid a visit to the kitchen to our cook, Mr. Delicious. So this video will give you some insight on how the food was actually prepared.
Those are just coming to get warm. You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much. Asante sana Rafiki.
As you can recognize, this is Mr. Delicious, our main cook.
So what we are having?
Today we start with soup. We have this pepper steak. Yeah.
So this is a paper steak.
Pepper steak.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Это как отбивные получается. Ага.
This is soup.
So we
start with this one.
Zucchini soup.
Yeah, zucchini.
And Karim is helping you with this, right?
Yeah. Baba yangu tumeenda huko tena. Kuna matata. Walter. Leta kisu.
And this is our provision, right? Did you already have supply
for the first 4 days? We had all the food provision brought with us from the town, and then after 4 days we had a new arrival of provision that was brought by our porter. So by this it was secured that we always had some fresh meat and vegetables.
The next 4 days, or it's coming still?
Huh? We already have it.
You already have
yes.
it? Oh, okay.
Like you see most of those just down there, they are very fresh.
Yeah.
You can just go and near the Dula there.
Oh, okay.
You can see how the cucumber is fresh, how the ananas is fresh.
So perfect. So this is our food for the next 4
fresh
days, right?
Alongside not so fresh foods of our porters.
Yeah, it's really warm here. Mr. Delicious is our cook, and we're having really cool food.
This is the stuff. They brought the water up.
Right.
Yeah, at the base camp. So I
So
make
got
the
an
lunch
idea
for
of
them.
how our typical Kilimanjaro menu looked like, but menu of the porters and the guides was a bit more ascetic than ours. Usually they ate ugali, the national dish that Masha already mentioned, but also rice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you know they do it. Yeah, and another one. Yeah, this guy here and this guy.
Yeah, so
and
as
another
you
one
also
is.
can see, kitchen was not only used as a place where Mr. Delicious cooked, but also a place for socializing for our porters and other members of the dream team. And also an interesting fact that one of our members was actually a woman. So on Kilimanjaro, you can indeed see porters who are women.
Living the tents.
Yeah, so that was my report from the kitchen. And now Christina will talk a bit more about the leisure on the campsite.
Yes, maybe only a few minutes. So trekking Kilimanjaro is not only about physical challenges which you get there, but it's also about the time, or not also, primarily, it's time with people. And this time we spent not only among our team, we were 6 people, and we had a lot of activities together. Either we were singing, a little bit dancing, exploring the camp, or deciding how much tips we should give to our porters, which actually also took us a few evenings. But also we were spending time with the locals. We were playing checkers. We were talking, learning a lot from them, and also sometimes we were singing together. And one video of this I would like also to show you.
Sing together, then now we start, okay?
Okay.
Alright, yeah. Yo, pass the mic around, pass the mic around.
Pass the mic around, pass the mic around.
Yo, pass the mic around, pass the mic around.
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 Yo, pass the mic around, pass the mic around.
Yeah, pass the mic around, pass the mic around.
Yo.
And with this, I would like to give the word to Yulia. She will tell you more about the culture and about people whom we met.
Yeah, Yulia, the stage is yours.
And Yulia, we cannot hear you. Yulia, you are muted.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying
Good.
to,
Now good connection.
Actually, day by day, we and our crew, we got to know each other better and better. Because during our stay, of course, we tried to communicate, because these people, they served us, also they helped us, and they saw every moment of our day, yeah, from waking up till going to sleep. That's why we tried to communicate, and as you saw, tried to play together or sing together. And they are very friendly, yeah, and open. And of course, they told us about their dreams, about their hobbies, about their thoughts. And also then we found out that they also suffer from the cold weather, lack of the comfort, homesick, but they try, do not show this to the tourists. What actually then we found out that, Vova, maybe can you help me for the next page? Yeah, it worked. That so this is very popular job in Tanzania, and people around all the country come to Arusha to be the part of the team that goes to Kilimanjaro. So you can find there the professional certified guides. So usually in the past they were porters, but then they decided to learn more and of course to earn more. Then it's the professional cook. So he takes the 6-month courses in a college. And porters. Porters are experienced and newbies, and our team told us that about their first time experience, and that some of them really suffered and they survived, but for them it was also the lifetime journey that they remember. And so they are people from different tribes, and they are all and young, and some of them do that only part-time, yeah, so to get more income, and for some of them, so it's the main job. So they are men and women as well. But what unites them all is stable and sufficient income, but also they hope for their tips. And tips is unavoidable and mandatory part of the tour. I'm trying to switch to the next. Yeah. So before our journey, of course, we checked in the internet about tipping recommendations. But then during the trip, we asked our guides, so how it goes. But at the end, we checked our cash and made our own calculations. And actually, this took us 2 evenings, firstly to decide so how much we can give to each person, and then also to wrap and prepare everything, because what we learned that it is better to wrap the money into some envelope. And actually we prepared the envelopes, but we forgot them in the hotel with all our stuff. So what we did, so we used the newspaper, and then we signed each envelope with money, and then it was a tipping ceremony. So what is a tipping ceremony? So the tipping ceremony usually takes place at the last camp after the summit. And again, it's the singing and dancing event, which ends up with the feedback from our team. So I will try to open the video.
Thank you for your cooperation with us for any case. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, I can add maybe some few points. Thanks, guys, for everything, and also your good cooperation. You made us easy to work. That's why we'll be sad when we leave each other down there, because we are family now, and we are and also saddest. Thanks so much for everything and what you just give us, because our families today are going to be happy and be our ambassador for this company, Kibinga, and you can make us busy maybe in another moment, because you meet with your friend and maybe you can tell them about Africa, and also it's just like take all the good things, but bad things leave it in the nature. So.
It's also a very memorable event of our trip, but what is the most important is the summit. Vova?
Yep. Yeah, guys, as you can imagine, summit night was the most challenging night that we had on the mountain, as we had to make a total elevation gain of almost 1,300 meters from the base camp, from the Barafo camp to the Uhuru Peak. And yeah, it was quite a challenge. The day before, we went to bed earlier than usual, just to get some sleep, as already at midnight we were supposed to have breakfast. It was actually quite difficult to fall asleep because of all the anxiety, but at the same time excitement that we had before the summit. Also, our guides mentioned once again all the health risks that we have to keep in mind when climbing Kilimanjaro during summit night. And Evgeny will tell you what these health risks are in a few slides. So yeah, after 1 a.m. we left the camp, almost the last ones. We could see in front of us a string of headlamps rising up the mountain. Most of the tourists have already started their ascent. For the first 2 to 3 hours, it was very quiet. It wasn't windy at all, and it was quite dark, and we were silent. I suppose every one of us was in his or her thoughts, probably thinking, why the hell am I doing this? Why do I need this? And yeah, it was quite also a mentally challenging ascent. We were doing from time to time stops almost every hour at the beginning of the climb to have some rest, to drink, and also to put an additional layer of clothes, as of course the higher we climb, the colder it would get. At some point my water bottle even froze. We were not only confronted, of course, with the weather conditions, but also with the signs of high altitude sickness. For example, speaking about my altitude sickness, first at the beginning of the night I had quite mild headache, but then it accelerated, and also already after 2 to 3 hours it became quite strong. And I could also see from the faces of my friends that they were also struggling physically, and yeah, they were not amused at all. And at about 5,500 meters, somewhere here on the map, just as the sun was about to rise, Yulia unfortunately had to stop her ascent and turn back. So Yulia, tell your story, why you decided to come back.
Yeah. Actually, I had a very unpleasant symptom of the high altitude sickness. I was vomiting during the descent. So that's why, and I had these symptoms in the evening. And when we started our summit, I didn't feel well, and it was also the anxiety. So when we reached, so I was suffering, honestly. And then when we met the people that were descending as well, yeah, so then I decided, okay, I am not the only one who is not able to do that. That's why I think I have to go back, because I don't want just to be there at any price. Yeah, I don't want to be delivered there. Yeah, so I want to do that either on my own or just go back. So I decided to go back. Yeah, and then I waited for my friends in the camp.
Yeah, so Yulia had to leave us, but our ascent continued nevertheless. And after about half an hour, we finally met the sunrise. It was actually quite an emotional moment. Well, for one, it was just spectacular to see the sun rise above the clouds, above the majestic Mavenzi. But also it meant that the night was over. The night that we thought was endless was finally over. And I also had sort of a feeling of euphoria at that moment, because I knew that, yeah, that's it, that we will make it to the crater rim, we will make it to the Uhuru peak. It was not even 100 meters to the Stella point. And yeah, this definitely cheered us up, gave us some additional energy to continue our climb. And maybe another half an hour after that, we reached the Stella point, which is the first point at the crater rim, and we would finally see the snow-covered crater of Kibo. I felt personally quite mixed feelings. It was a bit hectic because, you know, you dream of seeing the snows of Kilimanjaro and you think that this is a really unique experience, and then you are at Stella Point at the crater rim and you see tens, if not hundreds of tourists from all around the world. And at some point it felt as if it was some sort of like a typical European tourist site. So it was a bit frustrating. At the same time, I was trying to absorb all the beauty from the top of Kilimanjaro, like seeing the snow and the glaciers. But at the same time, I felt everything was sort of on a rush. The guides wanted us to proceed. Some other team members also wanted to go to the Uhuru Peak and back as soon as possible. So at some point, I was sort of left behind. The guys proceeded from the Stella Point to the Uhuru Peak, which is the highest point on the crater rim. Yeah, and because I was trying to catch up with the guys, I was out of my pace, and at some point I realized that I can't really breathe. So it was my critical point of the whole summit night. I really had to stop and inhale a few times. And that was really like the first time in my life that I couldn't really breathe. Yeah, so that was also quite an experience. Then I just calmed down and could proceed. And yeah, and just spectate the beauty of Kilimanjaro. And also we could see Mount Meru. It was quite clear day, a clear morning. And I can for sure say that this walk from the Stella Point along the crater rim to the Uhuru Peak, I would definitely never forget this walk. Yeah, and at about 8:30, we made it to the Uhuru Peak, to the summit of Kilimanjaro, and we made it. Everyone, I suppose, had quite mixed feelings about this achievement, but what counts is that we made it to the top of Africa, and that was fantastic. Evgeny, so the stage is yours now. Tell us about your summit day. Or better say summit night.
Yes. So, I mean, you've seen that basically this is the top of the adventure. This last bit, basically it's at least 7 hours of hiking during the night. So all of us, as you saw in Bova's slides, wake up in the middle of the night. For us, it was 11 a.m. So we have to get before 12 to get started at 12. And it starts with this beautiful, magical feeling of, you go out at night, you feel this is the night. You kind of are anxious to see if you're going to make it. And then you see all the lamps going up, which started with this magical, wonderful feeling. But what happens soon after is when you kind of stand in line with all the people who are trying to go up, is that you kind of lose the sight of the mountain. You start seeing the darkness around you and the many people that go in front and behind you, and just like looking in front of you and going slowly up. Very soon, for me and my friends, we started encountering what was the biggest challenge for each of us. And for this, I have to say that every person who will go up there will kind of find his own challenge. It is not that it will be the same challenge for everyone. It's that everyone has something else that will be troubling. So personally, for me, and this is something that was building up during the whole trip, is that there is very little oxygen up there, about half as much as down here. And so this is the whole acclimatization, is to get your body to be able to manage this. But still, you will not get around having a feeling of shortness of breath and the idea that you are not having enough air. And so the night when we were ascending, there was a very strong wind blowing in our face. So we needed to cover all our faces up with the bandanas that we were carrying up. And, now you might imagine that carrying Corona masks around, it's really unpleasant to have this thing in front of your face. And especially if you imagine that you are experiencing shortness of breath already. And so basically every larger step that you take, it just feels like, you need to stop for a moment and take your breath. And so what was the problem for us was that our guide was really, really rushing. It seemed that it was important for us not to lag behind and to be on particular timing. And he didn't really take great care to see that, it was kind of hard for me to be that quick. So, there was a little bit of a problem with him rushing and I needing my time. At the same time, also my friend experienced certain problems. For him, it was nausea. Nausea is a very common symptom that people experience there, although for him it was unexpected because his acclimatization before was just fine. And so when, we kind of stopped once in a while because he really felt like he needed to vomit. And that was for him, a very, very much his own struggle against his own body and kind of trying to hold it all together. And so our guides, they were really taking it rough. They were not giving us any breaks. We did not take time to catch our strength, and because we were a little slow, and it sounded like they were a little frustrated with us. And so for me, this was a big struggle with just keeping pace. And also I got more and more frustrated and unhappy about the way it was handled by our two guides who were with us on the mountain. So that basically when I reached the top, I was really, really upset with him because he didn't really take much care and didn't really provide me the feeling he wanted to care for us. So ultimately what happened was that in the very, very top, I basically screamed at him and told him that I'm not happy with this, which is a very rare thing for me to happen, because whoever knows me, I'm like a very calm person. I like to avoid conflicts. I try to talk things out. I never really raise my voice. So for us, basically this was after this picture was taken, which shows me and my friend at the summit. And we were really fine. We were on time. But I didn't really feel like taking a picture with that guide, which is usually done. Usually you have a picture of you and your guide and so forth. So when he approached me and said oh, you don't want to take a picture with me? So I was like, yes, I sure don't. And I tell you why. And then I told him about what I wasn't happy with, which for me was like, wow, I'm standing up for myself. That's really cool. So in a way that was, although there was a little anger thing in there, it was kind of an experience to care for myself, because I really figured out that I need to do that. Nobody else is doing that for me. And also, bring it to a conflict where I felt like I needed to say something. Just to give you the wrap up, like we were friends in the end. There was just this one moment, but it was an interesting experience for me to having done that in the end. And as you can see, my friend also made it. It was really incredibly hard for him. And maybe this tough ways the guides were handling it helped him to not go back and to finish the whole thing with the mountain and be at the Uhuru Peak. But it took a great toll on us, because walking back, and you can imagine, like, this is 7 hours until you're there if you are on time. And then going back to the base camp will take you at least like 2.5 hours if you are more or less fit. And so for us, like, we were both really, really fucked up. Like, for us, it took, I think, maybe 3.5 or 4 hours. And then you get 1 hour to rest, and then you have to further descend into the next camp, which is your last camp, and that's another 4 hours. So basically, added up, you have 7 hours in the night, and then maybe another 8 hours that day until you finally can fall asleep and forget everything and just process. So there was like a big challenge, but it was also a great day to have in my life. I think that's probably does it. Yeah. So as you already heard from my talk, so there are a lot of challenges that you face on that last day. And I think Vova just skipped it. Maybe you can go back to this. Yes. So it really takes a lot of willpower and a lot of decisiveness for you to be able to do this. With the Le Marche route, you should maybe know that 90% of people make it to the top. So it has the highest success rate of all the routes, and this is because it is 8 days, and you usually take it slow. And even 80-year-old people made it. So it's not about your physical fitness. It's just about giving your body enough time to accommodate. And it's not a major super hike. It's just being able to withhold unpleasant feelings and just suffer through it. That will bring you up there. So you need to expect that there will be headaches and nausea, because these are the typical symptoms of high altitude sickness, and everybody gets them one way or another. But of course, you can take medication against the headaches. Then shortness of breath, I already mentioned. Exhaustion, of course, is something that you can't avoid. And it should be mentioned that the climate is very, very cold. And it really depends on the weather. You can get all types of weather. For us, it was really intensive wind. So, you know, if you don't have the right or a good jacket, you can, you know, it can be very cold on the top, on the peak. For us, it was actually fine. Yeah, so prepare for, you know, to do this for 7 hours and then go back for about the same time. Yeah, that's the challenges of the summit day. Yeah, but up to that point, you also have to kind of bear the conditions. And although not as critical and not as intense, there are some challenges that you face on the way to the top. Yes, please, next one. Yes, thanks. So the trekking itself, you heard, it's 8 days in total. So basically days already is the descent and the ascent and the descent. But through all that time, you need to sleep in tents. You know, it's nice that you have porters and people to build this for you, but you still need to sleep in there. It's not, you know, it's not your bed. You kind of need to figure out how to do this. And for me, it took a couple of days until I figured out how to sleep in there. So there were a few sleepless days at the beginning. Obviously, there are no showers. There's actually no option of showers. I talked to my guides. Even the most luxurious options don't have showers. So you need to be able to, you know, kind of bear the idea that you will be stinking in the end. But only in the end, actually, you know, if you plan your clothes right, it's quite okay. And yeah, you need to be comfortable with the camping and the constant packing, unpacking, and you need to be ready in the morning when they leave to get your bags packed up. And from the health perspective, you've heard of the altitude sickness a couple of times now. But what we didn't tell you is that there is a chance that it can actually become a deadly condition. Namely, for some people, and you don't really know who it will be, people can develop either a high altitude pulmonary edema or a high altitude cerebral edema. And like one is basically water collecting in your lung and, you know, making it impossible for you to breathe. And the other thing is, you know, your brain gets an inflammation, and from both conditions you could die. And this is known to all types of high altitude mountains and so far. And whenever, if anything like that happens, you need to descend. And if you do that, you'll be fine. But you are not allowed to stay the same height or to go further up because it will kill you. And it does happen. Like later when I came down the mountain, I actually met one middle-aged lady who was there with her son, and she needed to descend because she developed a pulmonary thing, and she said she couldn't breathe anymore. So yeah, it's possible that that might happen to you, but your guides are usually well equipped and they will test your health every day. One other thing that people don't expect so much are sunburns, because the weather up there is relatively normal. Like here, you have like 10 degrees, 15 degrees Celsius, but you're still close to the equator. So if you forget to put sunscreen on your arms and your hands, you can get pretty severe burns. And I actually encountered one person in my camp who needed medical supplies because she has 3rd-degree burns on her hands from the walking sticks. Yeah, that can happen. And obviously, you know, it's tiring, and you need to be able to kind of stick through that. And even before you reach the top, there will probably be a day where you ask yourself, why the heck am I doing this? All right, then. That's so much for the challenges.
Yeah, and basically with this, we come to the major question that basically wraps up our experience on Kilimanjaro. Was it a lifetime adventure for us? Well, I can speak for myself and say definitely yes, it was. Despite all the challenges that Evgeny has just mentioned, or maybe even thanks to them, because, you know, these challenges, experiencing these hardships and overcoming discomfort on the mountain really helps you to learn a bit more about yourself, about your limits. It helps you to step out of your comfort zone. And usually magic happens once you step out of your comfort zone. And that's what basically happened to me. I realized many things. One, for example, was how important it is to enjoy the present moment, the moment of now, because we had been preparing for this trip for quite a long time, and usually in our daily lives we always sort of like leave with some future plans, but there, being on the mountain for 8 days, completely absorbed by the nature, by the mountain, by the local people, without internet connection, you truly appreciate how important it is just to enjoy the present time. Yeah, and that was overall a fantastic experience for me. And yeah, what about the rest of the guys? Was it a lifetime adventure for you?
Maybe since I'm like still visible, I'd say I continue here. As you have heard, it was quite a challenge for me, for sure. But it's so before that, I'll tell you this thing. Before I reached the top, I was thinking, well, that's cool. I'll do this now. And when I'm 6 years old, I'm coming back and doing this again. After the climb, I was like, I don't think I'm gonna do this again. I don't know. Maybe I will, but it is a really cool thing, and you really get to see something completely different and experience yourself in an entirely different environment, and it's in all kind of ways super enriching. Yeah, and you are if you go there, you will have one of the adventures of your lifetime for sure. I do not regret having done this. It was hard, and I personally would recommend this to people who want to experience the limits and who are ready to open themselves to new culture and see one of the wonders of the world.
Yeah.
So for me, it was very specific experience because honestly, I was not mentally prepared to suffer. So that's why I couldn't reach the top. Yeah, and also what I learned about myself, that sometimes I'm not able to do that, and I shouldn't regret. Yeah, so maybe to try another time, or just to set up the reachable goal. Yeah, but all the hiking thing. Yeah, so it's just the perfect. Yeah? And if you love nature, yeah, so I definitely recommend to come there, and also experience with the communication with locals. Yeah, because day by day, then you see that they have their own jokes. Yeah, so they have their hobbies and everything, and it's also a community, and you are just trying to be the part of it just for several days. And for us, I think that it's the best memories of the year. For this year, definitely.
That's for sure. I also would like to add a few things here. I would join also my friends about whatever was said so far. For me, it also was a lifetime adventure. And actually, I went there not that much for challenging myself, I think, but for experiencing the nature. And that's why shortly after the summit day, I was thinking that maybe I would not advise anyone afterwards to do this because it was too much. And if you want to enjoy the nature, maybe you should do it maybe up to 4,000 meters maximum. But already a few weeks afterwards, I was telling also to Vova that I would do it again because these are special emotions which you get and which you cannot get anywhere else. So whether you want to challenge yourself or not, just try it. And you will have your own experience, and you can make your own conclusions, but for sure you will enjoy it a lot. You will enjoy the people, you will enjoy the nature, you will enjoy experiencing yourself because you will not get it anywhere else. That's why I think I would recommend it now to do up to the top.
And well, now once again about pros and cons of this lifetime adventure. I mean, Christina already mentioned that anyhow you should do it, but Evgeny, do you have the same opinion, or maybe you want to add something?
So I think at this point we will leave it to the audience to think. So what are the main points? Lifetime adventure worth taking? Yes, no. Yes, once in a lifetime experience. It's a unique landscape, as you have shown, Vladimir. Then there are culturally cool and interesting stuff, including the foods, as the girls have shown us. You will go to your limits if you like it, and you'll go to know yourself if you like it. But it might be dangerous. It's actually quite pricey. Total, I don't know if we spoke about this in total, but be ready to spend $3,000 or more for this thing. Your basic hygiene, you kind of have to be able to downgrade the level of hygiene, physical suffering and discomfort for 8 days. So it's both sides. There are enough points for yes and for no. And I think at this point we should probably ask our audience what they think.
Yeah, guys, so maybe you can also speak up and tell us if you would ever consider such a journey, or maybe you've already been to Africa and also would want to share some of your experiences.